So slow. Mommy said be nice. I was thinking, hurry up, lady. Then I don't say that. And now we're dead. And we're dead. No. Oh, some people. Then I got my treat. It was good. So remember, people, don't walk slow. I have got no time for that. I got close to the goal.
How many of us feel that way at times? Person in front of us is too slow. Yeah? You got places to go. I'm echoey. You got places to go. Hurry up, lady. Hurry up, sir. Hurry up, kids. We're late. We're late for church. Right? Who said that this morning? Yeah. Who complained about the Sunday driver on their way to church today? Yeah. Yeah. And this is a daily occurrence for us. Unfortunately, we are being complain. There's a reason for that. And there's a reason why we complain. And today I'm hoping to bring that about. Maybe we've heard it before. Maybe we know. Maybe we try and practice it every so often. I don't know. I think it's a good time to maybe come back and think about these things, especially if we want to see, the church filled. If we want to see, the kingdom of God glorified. If we want to see Jesus, be glorified to our friends and everybody else, we have to live in a way where we do not talk that way. A heart of gratitude. And a little side question I want to pose to you is, what are we chained to? What are we chained to? In our home at the moment, our kids are going through a stage of life I think most of us have gone through, are going through, and will go through at some point in our lives, right? And I like to call this stage the complaining and whining stage, right? This is the complaining and whining stage of life. Let me explain. Most everything that we give our kids, or we give them as an experience, or we give them to eat, or whatever it might be, they either don't like, it is boring, it is not up to their standard, and no matter how fun and adventurous it is, or we make it, it is still boring, and they complain about it. Does it sound familiar? Yep. And the complaining is relentless. It's just non-stop, no matter what entertainment we give them. And here are some quotes that I thought about. The service is going too long. The announcements are too boring. It's the same people always doing something from the front. Youth is boring. The kitchen didn't sell lunch today. The kitchen is always selling stuff. It's too much. My boss demands too much of me. Nothing ever happens. Pastor again? There's nothing to watch on Netflix. My internet is way too slow. My mobile is weak and bad, and I get no reception in this place. What are they thinking? I have not met the right man yet. I've come to church for years, and God hasn't given me a man or a woman. And the list goes on and on and on in our lives, doesn't it? And many of us have this problem with complaining. And, the first thought that immediately comes to mind is there was a group of people that sort of said these things also in the midst of great miracles and blessings. Right? Yes. They saw amazing things that we would only wish we could see right now. Yet they stood there and complained about it. And I'm talking about the Israelites, of course. Right? And it sounds so familiar. Just like the Israelites coming out of all those years of slavery. God parts the Red Sea. Who's ever seen a sea being parted? Right? Who's ever seen a creek be parted? No. Gave them food daily. Gave them water daily. Gave them clothes that never wore down. Shoes that, didn't wear down. Shade, heat. They asked for it. They got it. But what did these people do? What did they do? They did what we do in the midst of amazing and great blessings in our lives. Right? Every single day, we see something. And today, we've seen a couple of examples. We've got Jenny, we've got Sister Alicia, blessing in their life. Right? Yet, we can turn around and next minute, and I didn't say next minute, my daughter, next minute, we're complaining about something. Right? Let me read Exodus 14:11. I hear that buzzing. 11 and 12. 14, 11 and 12. And they said to Moses, "Why did you bring us out here to die in the wilderness? Weren't there enough graves in Egypt for us all? What have you done to us, Moses? Why did you make us leave Egypt? Didn't we tell you this would happen while we were still there? We said, leave us alone." Right? Let us be slaves to the Egyptians. It's better to be a slave in Egypt. Right? It's better to be a slave in Egypt than die in this wilderness. We loved it when we were in Egypt. We loved being slaves. We loved being in bondage. That was fun. We hate being free. Oh, jeez, it's a pain. This place where God provides food and drink and everything for me. I hate it. Why, Moses? Sound familiar? Yes. Same sort of complaints all over again. But see, Moses replies and says something that we really need to pay attention to. And I don't know if we've ever noticed it before. But in Exodus 16:8, it says, Moses said, "This will happen when the Lord gives you meat and to eat in the evening, and in the morning enough bread to be fully satisfied, because the Lord has heard your murmurings against him. For what are we? Your murmurings are not against us." People, your murmurings are not against me and the leadership that's over you to take you through this desert period. Your murmurings are not against us. Right? But against the Lord. Your murmuring, what you're complaining about right now, it's actually against God. So you know what? You're not bothering me with your complaining because you're actually complaining against God. After everything he's given you and everything he gives you daily, yet you are here still complaining against what he's doing for you. Can you imagine if every time we complain in the middle of the enormous blessings that we have, living in this country where, we just sung about great southern land of the Holy Spirit, where we get, free housing if we need it, where we get free medicine if we need it, where we get whatever we need, education, all that sort of stuff. Such blessing, and sometimes we may not see that as a blessing. We forget that those benefits are there, and maybe we don't use them. Maybe we've decided to not, use the dole or whatever. But it's there, right? It's a blessing. It's something that this country gives us, and we have availability to. Imagine if in the middle of that, what we have, God in heaven was to take it personally and say, you're actually complaining against me. I've blessed you over and over and over again, and here you are complaining against what you have and what I've given you and what I continue to give you. Just think about that. See, we're talking about the power of our words, right? Our words have amazing power. And we have an amazing power to give life with our mouth, with our words, with our tongue. We can give life, we can encourage, we can lift, we can build people up. But at the same time, it also has the power of death, right? We have the power of death in our tongue. We can actually speak forth death in us and in others through what we say. See, Jesus said, out of the overflow or the abundance of the heart, our mouths speak. So what's in our hearts, what's overflowing, what we fill our heart with, is what actually comes out. It's what we're speaking. It's what we're living day to day. If we're not pleasing to God with our words, it shows something about our hearts, doesn't it? It may show that it's in a very bad place. Maybe showing that it might not be in the best place to show others what the love of God really is. It shows evidence to what's already in there. Our words, what we say, how we act, what we do. What I want to try and do today is to get you to hear this message through the lens of your most common complaint. What is your most common complaint right now? Most of us complain. We all complain about something, right? At some point or another. But I want you to think right now specifically about your most common complaint. Take a few seconds and think about your most common complaint right now. Right, everyone should have some that should be pretty quick and should be pretty simple because we all do it. Yep. So that shouldn't have taken any time to think about. Yeah. So what is your most common complaint? Any volunteers? No, I'm just kidding. It's all right. But can I tell you that whatever that complaint is, whatever that thing is that aches you the most, whatever that thing is that gets you to that point of, just giving it all, whatever, the problems are not those things. The problem is not that complaint. They're not those things that are the problem. But the problem is that we've allowed, right? We have allowed the enemy of our soul, Satan, to take our eyes, our focus, right? We've allowed him to take our focus of who? Off of who? Off of the goodness of God. Right? Our focus is completely off. When I'm complaining, my focus is not on God. Right? When I'm complaining, my focus is not on the Word of God. My focus is not on the salvation of others. My focus is not on blessing somebody else when I'm complaining. Right? And what's Satan done? He's put that focus directly on me, directly on himself. Because who's the most important person right now? Self. Me. See, our spiritual enemy has distracted us and taken our eyes of the enormous blessings, everything that's around us that is a blessing from God, right? And we have around us, right? Off of the goodness of the grace of God. Again, I'll mention the examples that we've heard today. That's amazing blessings, right? And put them on the smallness of who we are, of ourselves. And that makes us prone to complaining. At that point, we become the experts in complaining that we are. But what I want to attempt today is not to, I don't want to come down and preach down at us and at you and point out the things that you complain about. That's not my intent today. You know, and like I said, there would have been complaining even on the way here today. We would have experienced some complaining. We would have experienced, you know, our mouths going off at whoever and whatever because the focus was on me. I have to get there on time. I have to get my favorite seat in the church. I need to go and try and get that croissant that might or might not be there. You know, so it becomes about me. It becomes self-focused. It becomes, I need to do this. And if anything whacks that out of shape, then I complain. Right? I complain. No one greeted me this morning. Key word, me. Some of you are complaining, when is this guy going to finish this message? Right now, you're probably thinking, when's he going to finish? I've got somewhere to go. I've got a party or I've got somewhere to go. Sunday, I want to go rest. So hurry up, Aldo. Who's thinking that? No, just kidding. But I know there's someone in here. And I don't have to be a prophet for that. Right? And it would be very easy for me to preach and tell you how wrong this attitude is, how bad of us, and how we shouldn't do this, and how we, you know, I could bring conviction down upon you right now, and I could make you feel this little, right? Just preaching the word to you about this topic. But what I want to do is to try and bring about a word of encouragement instead. So I don't want us to, and I don't want you to encourage you. I don't want to encourage you to not complain, because that's almost impossible, right? I cannot encourage you to not complain. That becomes very difficult. It's a hard task for us, right? Because until our focus is completely on God, it's going to be almost impossible for us to do, right? So that's not what I want to encourage you. But what I want to encourage you is to take your eyes of you. Take your eye off yourself, right? Take your eyes off of you, who you think is the most important being right now, right? And that's what I want to encourage you to do. And recognize and begin to see the goodness of God once again. Begin to see the little things that sometimes we miss because we're so focused on us. Right? And there's a lot of little good things that happen around us, and we miss them because I'm more important. Right? And we miss those times. We miss those things. And rather than feeling guilty today, I hope that you're going to feel encouraged. Right? And in that encouragement of the grace of God, allowing God to move and to see those things again, like I've been saying, so that we can get to a higher level. Get to a higher level of the use of our words. Amen. Right? Because that's what it comes down to. Yes. And part of that is praising God. Praising God daily. Praising God for whatever it is that we experience and do and see. And today, again, 2 examples of that. Praising God, giving God thanks for the things that have happened in their lives. Have they complained in between? Probably. Right? Was Jenny complaining, oh, well, that time of the month came around and they didn't do what they said they were going to do? You know, maybe she didn't. And maybe why she's received this blessing. I don't know. I haven't talked to her. But we need to check our hearts. We need to check our attitude. We need to check, you know, what it is that's keeping us. I want to show you through a text in the New Testament who's someone's life who really had a reason to really complain, right? This guy is justified. He would have been really justified in complaining. He really had a reason to complain and be really sort of, you know, a little bit upset with God. There's a particular time in Paul's life. He's imprisoned in Rome. He comes under house arrest and in chains in Rome. But somehow he smashes the thought and idea of being ungrateful, right? And he shows this through one of the letters to the Philippians, right? And in Philippians, well, I'll get to that. Just give you a little background history on Paul and why he ends up there. Now, Paul always wanted to go to Rome. That was his, you know, that was his dream, to go to Rome, because that was a hub city where everyone came together, and he saw that as a great opportunity to preach and to, share the message of God, and it would be taken all around the world from there. So that was his dream, to go to Rome as a preacher to do his thing. Right? That was his dream. Unfortunately, he got to Rome, but he didn't get there as a preacher. He got there as a prisoner, right? He got there as a prisoner, and quite possibly awaiting death, quite possibly on a death sentence, right? So think about it. Can you imagine? You waited most of your life to get to Rome as a preacher, to get there, to do your thing, the thing that you've been ordained by Jesus Christ himself to go and do. You're there as a prisoner, under constant guard, 24 hours a day, chained up to a Roman soldier, right? Not able to do much of what he really wanted to do for 2 years. 2 years of his life. Now, I can tell you, if that was me, I would have been complaining. If that was me, I would have been complaining, right? God, this isn't fair. You know my heart. You know that I've wanted to come to this place to preach your word. You know that I've wanted to come to this place to, share you to these people. And here I am arrested and I can't do any of that. Why, God? Why has this happened to me? I've been shipwrecked for you. I've been whipped for you. I've been bitten by snakes for you. Come on, when's it going to end, God? All I've done is served you. That's all I've done. The food is bad, the floor is cold. These soldiers are constantly here with me. Please do something about it, God. But see, Paul writes something from that prison, from that prison or house arrest, wherever he was. And in chains, in the worst of places to be, right, he writes. And it's 6 or 7 words that he writes. Philippians 2:14. Do everything without complaining and arguing. Simple. That's it. That's the verse. Do everything without complaining and arguing. Who does that? We do everything without complaining or arguing. Anyone? No hands going up this time. Nope. Mine's not up either. I'm just an example. This is coming from a man in chains. This is coming from a man under arrest. This is coming from a man looking at possible death. Do everything without complaining and arguing. Okay, Paul. It's easier said than done. Thank you for those words. Appreciate it. Why? Why does he write this? And we see the why on Philippians 2:15. So that you may prove yourselves to be blameless and guileless, honest, innocent and uncontaminated, children of God without blemish in the midst of a morally crooked and spiritually perverse generation, among whom you are seen as bright lights, beacons shining out clearly in the world of darkness. That's basically who we should be, right? That's the definition of a Christian. That's the definition of who we should be walking around as every day of our lives, every minute of our day. Right? That's the example that we should be. But in order to do that, we have to walk around doing everything without complaining and without arguing. So it's great that we want to see all these things happen around us and in church and in our community in Australia. But we've got a bit of work to do, don't we? Yes. We have a bit of work to do. See, there are so many spiritual reasons why we shouldn't complain. So many spiritual. We can go through the Word and find this and that and the other of why we should not complain. But I like also looking at the practical side of things. And there's actual research being done, right, on what happens to our brain when we complain. And simply what happens is that your brain rewires for more complaining. It's very simple. And I think Pastor John's or Pastor Clara's always used the term, you complain, you remain, right? And that's what happens. We complain, and it's just rewiring of the brain for more complaining. Why? Because the focus, again, is on me. In other words, if we are negative, we are predisposing our brain, we are predisposing ourselves to continue thinking more negative thoughts. Negative compounds and begets more negative, right? It's a compound effect. We build and we do something, it grows and it multiplies and it becomes even more, right? Negative upon negative equals more negative. Another study, it's called confirmation bias. Anyone heard of confirmation bias? It's where I think about something and I think about this thing so much that I actually get to experience my thoughts. In other words, what's a good example? In other words, I've been invited to this restaurant. I don't like the type of food, and I think about that type of food over and over and over and over, how I'm not going to like it, how it's going to taste nasty, how it's got nothing that I like, how it's got no ingredients that I like, how it's got nothing that I'm really going to enjoy, but I'll go anyways. And what do I experience? Food's no good, everything's nasty, the staff are no good, it's too expensive. We find every little bit of fault that we can with it because before I even went to the place, I had already made up my mind and I had already built it up in me so much that it was not going to be enjoyable. Right? Yeah. Confirmation bias. We increase the odds of being dissatisfied with something the more we think about it. We need to remember that our words are both spiritual and practical. Right? Our words work in the spiritual and in the practical area of our lives. And so often we see